Hi, I'm Dr. Chris Danielson, instructor of low brass at Westfield State University. I'm also the principal trombone of the Valley Winds and the New England Repertory Orchestra. In this video, I'll walk you through some tips that will help you prepare for the upcoming district band and orchestra auditions. Let's start with the solo. Joseph-Edouard Barrault was a French composer, and his piece Andante Allegro, which means slowish and fast, has been a long-standing piece of core repertoire for the trombone. It features a great deal of contrast. The opening Andante section is constantly fluctuating between loud and soft and slow and fast. The brisker Allegro section builds momentum throughout until a definitive forte closing. It's important to listen to great recorded examples of this piece. I'd suggest Jeremy Wilson on YouTube, and other pieces in the same style. Try listening to Bozza's Ballade for trombone, Tomasi's Concerto for trombone, Guillemot's Morceau symphonique, and Jongen's Aria et Polonaise. Absorb the style and apply it to your own interpretation of this classic. Next, I'm going to give you 3 specific tips on some of the trickier technical aspects of this piece. One of the most intimidating things about Barrault's Andante Allegro are the rhythms in the opening section. The first step in decoding these triplets is to break them down into simpler chunks. Let's start with the first one. The tempo is slow, so it's important to feel eighth note subdivisions of the beat. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Before playing the rhythm as written, practice leaving out the first high and the second and third notes of the triplets. You should now be playing a note on each eighth note subdivision. Next, practice as written, but still without the tie. Remember, each 16th note triplet takes the time of 1/8 note, and practicing with a metronome is always time well spent. Once this feels easy, play as written with the tie. Now repeat this process with measures 4 and 5. This confusing non-uplet rhythm is really just an eighth note triplet where each note of the triplet is divided into 3. Here you need to practice feeling eighth note subdivisions except for beat 2 where you need to feel an eighth note triplet. 1 and triplet, 3 and 4 and 1. Practice playing this passage without the first high and leaving out the second and third notes of the triplets. Once you can play it like this, put the tie and the missing triplet notes back in. Although it's important to play the rhythms correctly, in this style of music, some flexibility in tempo is expected, and it's okay to play the non-uplet a little slow, as long as it's faster than the triplet notes for measures 2 and 3. The Barrault requires a great deal of legato, or slurred, playing. Playing legato on the trombone presents some unique challenges to the instrument. In short, we don't have buttons to press. There's always the danger of making an unintended glissando. The basic technique is to use a natural slur when moving between notes on different partials, and legato tonguing when moving between notes on the same partial. A natural slur is simply changing partial without stopping your air with the tongue, just like practicing lip slurs. For legato tonguing, instead of saying ta like you normally would, the tongue stroke is much lighter and quicker, da or na. As with any type of tonguing, the important part is the air. For both techniques, your air should be constant. It should not stop between notes. Now, let's apply this technique to a passage from the Barat. The passage at measure 89 is a great place to start. I find that the best way to practice this is by first glissandoing the passage. This just means I play the passage without using my tongue at all and making sure to blow air the whole time. Move the slide quickly. The point isn't to make an exaggerated glissando. This shows you immediately where you need to add legato tongue to cover up the glissandos and where you can rely on a natural slur. I'll glissando this passage once, then I'll put in the legato tongue the second time. I've marked all the notes that get a legato tongue with an L. Also notice the use of alternate positions. This is to keep half steps on the same partial. The fanfare-like opening material of the Allegro section of the Barat, measures 60 through 67, presents a perfect opportunity to discuss a classic rhythm trap. This passage includes both dotted 8th and 16th note rhythms and triplet 8th notes. Many students make the mistake of playing the 16th note early and long, making it sound like a triplet rhythm instead of a 16th note rhythm. Make sure the 16th note is short, crisp, and placed exactly on the 4th subdivision of the beat. A trick to help make a distinction between these two rhythms is to leave a tiny bit of space after the dotted 8th, playing it instead like an 8th note followed by a 16th note rest, then the written 16th note. As a contrast, play the notes of the triplet rhythm with no space between them. This will help the two rhythms to sound different and leave no doubt they are subdivided correctly. I'll demonstrate this dotted rhythm with no space, then with the space that I suggest so you can hear the difference. Then I'll play the entire passage. I like to tell my students that the scales part of the audition is the easiest place to get points. This is because most students do a poor job preparing their scales. Get these scales memorized as soon as possible and run through them every time you take your horn out of the case. Some of these scales go kind of high. If high B flat isn't easy for you yet, don't worry. You can build up to it systematically while practicing these scales. The first step is to realistically determine how high you can play comfortably. Let's say that's F above the staff. Practice all the scales, but don't play higher than an F. For all the notes that are higher than an F, replace them with Fs. Do this for a week or two, then add the next note of the scale, F sharp or G. Once that becomes comfortable, keep adding notes every week or two until you can make it up to high B flat. I've written this entire thing out for you so you can try it out. Another challenge is the chromatic scale. These can be quite tricky on the trombone. You either have to move the slide a lot between two notes or just one position. It's also easy to lose track of what position you are in past the bell. My suggestion for practicing this chromatic scale is to work one triplet at a time, including the first note of the next triplet as well. Repeat each triplet several times before moving on to the next one. Next, practice larger groupings like 2 triplets or 4 triplets. Really focus on the first note of each triplet. These notes will be your guideposts when you put the entire scale together. The only way to get better at sight reading is to do it. Do a little bit every day using etude books such as Arbon, Rochu, Bloom, Slama, and Samara. There's an endless supply of music out there. Playing duets is also a great way to work on this skill. My sight reading improved tremendously when I joined a community band that didn't rehearse and played a new set of music every week. When you prepare to sight read, make sure you check out all the important information the score gives you before you try to play it. Many people find the acronym STARS, S-T-A-R-S, helpful in doing this. S is for key signature. Make sure you check the key signature. T is for time signature and tempo. A is for accidentals. Scan the passage to see if there are accidentals you need to watch out for. R is for rhythm. Do you see any confusing rhythms that you should figure out before you start? The last S is for signs and symbols. Look at any articulations, slurs, ties, crescendos, first and second endings, and anything else on the page. Once you've scanned for all these things, find the hardest looking spot. Think about how fast you can play it, and start at that tempo. Thank you so much for checking out this video. I hope that these tips were helpful, and good luck at your audition. We can't wait to see you at Westfield State. Now go practice.